The stars of the Milky Way stretched like silver dust across the black sea of space, in that quiet and endless ocean. The human starship Odyssey moved slowly toward the heart of the Zareth Empire, a civilization so ancient and vast that even the oldest human historians could not imagine its full glory. Captain Ethan Cole, commander of the Odyssey, stood at the front window of his ship. His eyes looked calm, but his heart beat with both excitement and caution. He was about to become the first human to meet Queen Lyra, ruler of the Zareth, a race known for their beauty, wisdom, and mysterious power. "Captain," said Lieutenant Harper, his communication officer, "we've received the Queen's signal. They're ready to receive us at the royal city of Aurelia Prime." Ethan nodded slowly. "Good, prepare the landing team. Remember, this is not just a meeting. It's the start of peace between two worlds." The Odyssey entered the planet's atmosphere. Below them, a world of shining crystal towers, blue forests, and floating gardens came into view. Everything glowed with gentle light, not artificial but natural, as if the planet itself breathed energy. When the ship touched down at the royal landing platform, a group of tall Zareth guards awaited them. Their armor shimmered like liquid silver, and their movements were graceful and calm. At their head stood a woman with golden eyes and pale, glass-like skin that reflected every color of the surrounding light. She was the Queen's daughter, Princess Seraphine. Seraphine stepped forward and bowed lightly. Her voice was like music when she spoke. "Welcome, Captain Ethan Cole of Earth. My mother, Queen Lyra, awaits your arrival in the Royal Hall. I am Seraphine, your guide and translator." Ethan returned a respectful bow. "It's an honor, Princess. Humanity has long hoped for this day." Seraphine smiled, but there was curiosity in her expression. "Your people are young among the stars, yet you reach so far. My mother believes your kind has something the galaxy needs and heart." Ethan smiled slightly. "Maybe. Or maybe we just have too much hope." As they walked through the city, Ethan couldn't help but stare at the wonders around him. Buildings floated above rivers of light, bridges formed from beams of energy, and creatures of every shape and color moved peacefully through the streets. Yet what amazed him most was how calm and beautiful everything felt. The air itself hummed softly, like the whole world was alive. Seraphine noticed his silence. "It's different from Earth, isn't it?" "Yes," he said quietly. "On Earth, beauty is rare and fragile. Here it feels endless." Seraphine looked at him with a small smile. "Endless beauty can also be lonely, Captain. Sometimes it blinds us to what truly matters." Ethan didn't reply, but her words stayed in his heart. They reached the royal palace, and a massive structure that seemed to be made of pure crystal and living light. Giant pillars rose to the sky, and the walls shimmered with images of stars and galaxies. At the center of the hall sat Queen Lyra herself. She was tall and graceful, her eyes like two suns. Her voice carried both power and kindness when she spoke. "Welcome, human," she said. "You have come far to meet us. Few have ever crossed the void and entered the halls of Zareth." Ethan bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, humanity seeks friendship, not conquest. We wish to learn, to share, and to grow together." The Queen studied him carefully. "Many have said those words before, Captain Cole. Few have meant them." Ethan met her gaze. "Then let my actions prove my truth, not my words." A faint smile touched her lips. "We shall see." The Queen invited him to dine in her court that evening. Until then, Seraphine guided Ethan through the gardens of the palace. The gardens were unlike anything he had seen. Trees that sang softly in the wind, flowers that glowed when touched, and streams of golden water that whispered as they flowed. Seraphine moved through it gracefully, like a being born from light itself. Ethan tried not to stare, but it was difficult. Her presence felt unreal and too perfect, too radiant. Her silver hair shimmered under the twin suns of Zareth, and her eyes seemed to hold the stars themselves. She noticed his unease and asked gently, "You seem troubled, Captain. Are my people so strange to you?" Ethan shook his head. "Not strange, just overwhelming." She tilted her head slightly. "Overwhelming?" He smiled awkwardly. "Yes, it's like looking at something too bright. You want to admire it, but it blinds you." For a moment she said nothing. Then she laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes. "You speak like a poet, Captain Cole. Perhaps that is why my mother is curious about humans." That evening the royal hall was filled with nobles, ambassadors, and scholars. Lights floated like small stars above the tables. The queen sat at the head, her crown glowing softly, while Ethan sat beside Seraphine. The Zareth musicians played gentle melodies that echoed across the hall. Exotic dishes shimmered with color and light, though Ethan barely tasted them. His attention was drawn again and again to the people around him, their calm movements, their shining eyes. They looked almost divine, yet there was a deep sadness beneath their perfection. Queen Leora raised her glass and spoke. To peace between the Zareth and humanity. May this day mark the beginning of a new era. Everyone raised their glasses in unison. Ethan did the same and said, To peace, Mike, and understanding. The queen smiled. Understanding, yes. That is a rare gift in the universe. After dinner, the queen began to ask questions about Earth, human emotions, and their strange ability to love deeply even in pain. Ethan answered honestly. He spoke of humanity's struggles, their wars, but also their dreams and compassion. When he spoke of love, the queen leaned forward with interest. Love, she said softly. Such a small word for such great power. Tell me, Captain, what does love mean to you? Ethan thought carefully. Love means seeing another not as perfect, but as real. It's not about light or beauty. It's about connection, about standing with someone even when they fall. The hall grew silent. The queen smiled faintly, and even Seraphine looked at him with quiet admiration. When the feast ended, Seraphine escorted Ethan to his chamber. The corridor was quiet, filled with the soft light of crystal lanterns. You spoke bravely today, she said. No one has ever spoken to my mother in such a way. Ethan shrugged. I only spoke the truth. Truth can be dangerous, Captain, she said with a gentle smile. But sometimes it's the only light we have. They stopped before his door. For a moment neither spoke. Then Seraphine said softly, My mother will test you, Ethan Cole. Not with words, but with understanding. Be ready, Ethan nodded. I'll do my best. She smiled one last time and turned to leave, her silver hair shining like moonlight. As she walked away, Ethan felt a strange feeling in his chest. Not fear, not admiration, but something he couldn't name. He whispered to himself, Too beautiful. Far too beautiful. Later that night, as the twin moons of Zareth rose over the shining city, Ethan stood by the window of his chamber. He looked out at the alien skyline, towers of light, bridges of crystal, and flying ships glowing like fireflies. He thought about the Queen's wisdom, Seraphine's calm smile, and the quiet strength that seemed to flow through this world. Humanity had come seeking peace, but he felt there was something more, a lesson hidden within this ancient race. And deep inside, he knew the real challenge had only begun. Tomorrow, the Queen would question him again, and her next question would change his life forever. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the crystal walls of Ethan's room. The sound of calm music drifted in from the gardens, a melody made by the wind and leaves. Everything on the planet Zareth seemed peaceful, yet Ethan's heart was restless. He knew the Queen would summon him today. Her eyes the night before had carried curiosity, not anger. But curiosity from a being like her could be more dangerous than any weapon. She wanted to understand humans, and Ethan had a feeling that he would be her first test. He dressed in his simple dark uniform, looked at his reflection, and took a deep breath. You can do this, he whispered to himself. Moments later, a soft chime sounded at his door. It slid open and Princess Seraphine stood there, her expression calm as ever. The Queen requests your presence in the Grand Hall, she said. Ethan nodded. Of course, Princess. Lead the way. As they walked through the palace corridors, the walls shimmered with faint lights showing living paintings that moved like dreams. The faces of past rulers appeared for a moment and then faded, replaced by stars and galaxies. Ethan felt like he was walking through the memories of time itself. Seraphine glanced at him as they walked. You seem uneasy, Captain Cole. Are you afraid? Ethan gave a small smile. A little. Your mother's gaze could stop a warship mid-flight. Seraphine laughed softly. Yes, it has stopped many things, even hearts. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. Only for those who hide the truth, she replied gently. He could feel she was preparing him for something, but he didn't know what. The Grand Hall was larger than any cathedral on Earth. The floor shone like silver glass, reflecting the stars painted on the ceiling. Thousands of Zareth nobles stood in silence on either side, their eyes focused on the throne at the far end. There sat Queen Lyra, dressed in a flowing gown that shimmered like liquid sunlight. Her crown was made of glowing crystals that pulsed softly as if alive. When Ethan entered, every noble turned their head to him. The hall grew completely silent. Only the soft hum of the palace energy remained. Seraphine walked beside him, calm and poised. But Ethan could sense her tension. He bowed deeply before the queen. "Your Majesty." Queen Lyra rose from her throne, her steps graceful and light like she was made of air. Her eyes met his, golden and bright. "Captain Ethan Cole," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "You spoke of truth, love, and courage last night. My people were moved by your words." "I only spoke what I believe, Your Majesty," he replied respectfully. The queen's lips curved slightly. "Then allow me to ask you a question, one that has stirred my heart." Ethan straightened. "I am honored to answer, Your Majesty." The queen's voice was soft, yet it carried through the hall like thunder. "Human, why do you not love my daughter?" For a moment, time seemed to stop. The hall fell into a deeper silence than before. Every eye turned toward Ethan. Even the floating lights above the hall dimmed slightly, as if holding their breath. Seraphine froze beside him, her eyes wide with surprise. She had not expected this. Ethan's mind went blank. Of all questions he could have imagined, this one was beyond them all. He took a slow breath. He could feel the weight of 1,000 stares pressing on his back. But the queen's face was calm, her eyes waiting for truth. At last Ethan spoke. His voice was steady, though quiet. "Your Majesty, because she is too beautiful." A wave of murmurs swept through the hall. Some nobles looked shocked, others amused. A few even frowned. To the Zareth, beauty was sacred, but to call it a reason for rejection was unthinkable. The queen raised her hand and silence returned. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. "Too beautiful?" she repeated softly. "Explain yourself, human." Ethan bowed his head for a moment, searching for the right words. Then he lifted his gaze and spoke clearly, his voice echoing in the hall. "Your Majesty, when a thing is too beautiful, it blinds the heart. It makes one forget duty, reason, and peace. Your daughter's beauty is not only of form, it is of spirit, light, and wisdom. If I allowed myself to love her, I would lose the balance that makes me who I am." He paused, then continued. "To love her would be to stand before the sun. It would warm me, yes, but also burn me. I would stop being myself. And she deserves more than that. She deserves someone who can see beyond her light. Someone who can love her soul, not just her beauty." The words hung in the air. Even the nobles who had frowned now looked thoughtful. The queen remained silent for a long time, her eyes studying him deeply. Finally, she spoke in a quiet tone. "You speak with wisdom, Captain Cole. Many have sought my daughter's hand for her beauty, her power, her grace. Yet none have spoken of the danger of her light." She turned toward Seraphine.
"And you, my daughter, what do you think of the human's answer?"
Seraphine hesitated. Her voice, when it came, was soft. "I think he sees me differently, Mother. Not as a prize, but as a person. I do not know whether to be insulted or honored." The queen smiled faintly. "Perhaps both." A gentle laugh spread through the hall, easing the tension. The queen returned to her throne, motioning for Ethan to rise. "You have answered with honesty, and that is a gift rarer than gold among the stars. But tell me, Captain, if you do not love my daughter, then what do you feel for her?" Ethan met Seraphine's eyes. They shone like twin moons, bright and kind. He said softly, "Respect, Your Majesty, and awe. She is a reminder of everything humanity still wishes to become, strong, wise, and full of light. But love, true love, must be between equals. I am not her equal." Queen Lyra's gaze softened. "And yet perhaps that humility makes you closer to her than you think." The nobles whispered again, but this time with respect. The queen raised her hand for silence. "Let it be known," she declared, "that this human has spoken words of courage and truth before the royal court of Zareth. His honesty honors us." She stepped closer to Ethan and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. "You have much to teach, Captain Cole. Your kind sees beauty not as treasure, but as a test. That is a lesson even the ancient must learn again." Ethan bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Later, when the court was dismissed, Seraphine walked beside him through the quiet halls. She looked both embarrassed and thoughtful. "You made quite a scene," she said softly. Ethan sighed. "I didn't mean to." I just answered honestly. She stopped walking and turned to him. Too beautiful, you said. Do humans truly think that beauty can be a burden? Ethan met her gaze. Yes, because sometimes beauty hides pain. Sometimes it keeps others away, just like now. For the first time, she looked uncertain. You think my beauty keeps you away? He nodded slowly. It makes it hard to see you clearly. You shine so brightly that I forget there's a person beneath that light. Seraphine was silent for a long moment. Then she said quietly, You may be the first one who has ever said that to me. Ethan smiled faintly. Then I hope I haven't offended you. She shook her head. No, Captain. You've done something far stranger. You've made me think. They continued walking, the silence between them no longer uncomfortable. It was peaceful, almost gentle. That evening, as the sons of Zareth sat behind the crystal towers, Queen Lyra stood on her balcony, watching the stars. One of her advisors approached quietly. Your Majesty, he said, the human is unusual. His honesty could be dangerous. The Queen smiled, or powerful. Sometimes the smallest flame of truth can light the darkest halls. She turned her gaze to the horizon, where Earth's star shone faintly among the countless others. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength is not its machines or ships, but its heart. Far below, in his quarters, Ethan stood by the window gazing at the same sky. He thought of the Queen's question and his own answer. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. The Queen's interest in him was far from over. Somewhere deep inside, he felt that his journey with the Zareth was only beginning, and that Seraphine's light, though too bright to love, would still guide him through the shadows ahead. Days passed after the Queen's question, but its echo still lived in the hearts of everyone who had been in the royal hall. Some called Ethan brave, others called him foolish, but Queen Lyra had not spoken of the matter again. She continued her meetings with the human captain as if nothing had happened, though her eyes sometimes held a quiet, knowing smile. Ethan continued his diplomatic work, studying Zareth technology, culture, and law. Every day he learned something new. The Zareth were advanced beyond imagination, yet they lived in harmony with nature. Their machines grew like plants, their ships sang when they flew, and their energy came from the stars themselves. Seraphine often joined him in these studies. She was patient and curious, and her calm voice helped him understand the strange symbols and glowing devices that filled the halls. They began to spend long hours together, not as diplomat and guide, but as two friends learning from each other. Still, in the back of Ethan's mind, her mother's question lingered like a soft shadow. One evening, while the twin sons of Zareth sank behind the crystal towers, a loud alarm suddenly echoed across the city. The ground trembled faintly. The calm lights of the palace shifted from gold to deep red. Ethan turned sharply to Seraphine. What's happening? Her expression turned serious. An emergency signal. Something is entering our system. They rushed toward the central command chamber. Zareth officers stood before floating screens filled with star maps and glowing trails of ships. The Queen was already there, her face calm but her eyes sharp. Report, she ordered. A general bowed deeply. Your Majesty, unidentified ships have entered from the outer rim. Their energy signatures match the Krathos, old enemies of our people. The word Krathos sent a chill through the room. Ethan had read about them, a race of shadow-like beings who destroyed whole planets to drain their energy. They were ancient, merciless, and powerful. Ethan stepped forward. How many ships? Over 200, the general replied. They're heading toward the colony moons. Our border fleet is too far to respond quickly. Ethan looked at the Queen. Your Majesty, if you allow it, I'll call the human fleet nearby. We can help. The Queen studied him for a moment, then nodded. Do so. Let this be the first trial of our alliance. Within hours, the joint defense fleet was formed, human and Zareth ships flying side by side for the first time. The human ships were smaller but fast, built for quick strikes. The Zareth vessels were enormous and graceful, glowing like suns as they moved. Ethan commanded the human flagship Odyssey, while Seraphine joined him as Zareth representative. The Queen trusted no one else to guide her daughter, and perhaps she trusted Ethan's heart more than his strength. As the fleet entered space, Ethan stood on the command deck watching the stars slide by. Seraphine stood beside him, her expression calm but her voice low. My people have fought the Krathos before, she said. They do not fight for land or power. They feed on energy, life energy, even from planets. Ethan nodded grimly. Then we'll stop them before they reach yours. She looked at him with quiet trust. Be careful, Captain. You are brave, but bravery without caution can become sorrow. He smiled faintly. I'll remember that. Soon, the Krythos fleet appeared on the edge of their sensors. Dark ships shaped like jagged shards of night. They moved like shadows, swallowing the light around them. Energy readings spiked wildly as the enemy charged forward. Enemy approaching fast, shouted Harper, Ethan's lieutenant. Ethan stood firm. Form up, keep formation Delta 3. Let's show them what Earth and Zareth can do together. The human and Zareth ships moved into position, light and shadow clashing across the stars. The first wave of Krythos ships fired beams of dark energy, tearing through the empty void. The Zareth shields shimmered like ripples of water, holding back the attack. Return fire, Ethan commanded. Blue and gold beams lit the darkness as the combined fleet fired. Explosions bloomed like small suns across the blackness. But the Krythos kept coming, more and more of them like a storm of living night. On the bridge, alarms blared. The Odyssey shook as an enemy blast struck the side. Sparks flew. Shields down to 60%, Harper called. Divert all power to forward defense, Ethan shouted. Zareth ships, cover the left flank. Seraphine's hands moved quickly across the glowing controls. Zareth fleet responding. But their main ship is targeting your vessel, Captain. Before Ethan could answer, a massive dark beam hit them, throwing everyone off balance. The lights flickered, and for a moment everything went silent except for the soft hum of emergency power. Ethan looked around. Status. Engines still active, Harper said. But we've lost the main shield. Seraphine stood up, her silver hair glowing in the red light. Captain, we must move here now. Ethan nodded. Prepare for evasive maneuver. The Odyssey dived sharply, weaving through the chaos of battle. Zareth and human ships followed, firing bright energy blasts that cut through the dark fleet. The Krythos formation broke apart under the pressure. Nice flying, Seraphine said, a small smile on her face. Ethan grinned back. Not bad for a human, right? But before they could celebrate, the screen flashed again, a new threat. A massive Krythos battleship appeared behind them, larger than anything they had seen. Its energy readings were off the scale. Ethan's eyes widened. That thing could destroy half the fleet. Seraphine touched the control crystal. We have one chance. If we can overload its core with combined firepower, it might collapse. Ethan nodded. Then let's do it. Signal all ships. Focus fire on that main ship. The fleet turned as one, human and Zareth ships uniting their weapons. Streams of light, gold, blue, and white, shot across space, striking the giant dark ship. The Krythos vessel answered with beams of shadow that sliced through several allied ships. Ethan's voice rose above the chaos. Keep firing. Don't let up. The Zareth flagship joined the attack, its glowing crystals pulsing with immense energy. The air on the Odyssey vibrated as the ship released its final power shot, a beam of pure light that cut straight into the Krythos core. The dark ship began to shake violently. Cracks of light appeared across its surface, growing brighter and brighter until it exploded in a storm of blinding brilliance. The shockwave rippled through the battlefield, pushing the remaining Krythos ships away. The surviving enemies turned and fled into the dark void. A cheer rose through the fleet. The first battle between humans and Zareth, and they had won together. When the Odyssey landed back on Zareth, the city greeted them with joy. The Queen herself waited at the palace gates, her golden eyes shining with pride. Ethan stepped forward and bowed. The Krythos have retreated, Your Majesty. The border colonies are safe. Queen Leora nodded. You have done well, Captain Cole. Both you and my daughter. Seraphine smiled softly. It was not courage alone, Mother. It was trust between our people. The Queen looked at Ethan for a long moment. Perhaps, Captain, humanity's strength is not in its weapons or ships, but in its heart. You fought not for glory, but for life. That is something even we, the Zareth, sometimes forget. Ethan bowed his head humbly. We only did what we had to, Your Majesty. The Queen smiled faintly. And that is why you are different from the others who sought our friendship. You fight because you must, not because you wish to. That night, Ethan stood again on the palace balcony beside Seraphine. The stars shone brightly above, peaceful after the storm. You risked your life for my people? Seraphine said quietly. Why? Ethan looked at her, his voice soft. Because that's what we do, Princess. When someone believes in us, we fight for them. We protect what we care about, even if it's not our world." She smiled, her silver eyes glowing gently. "Maybe that's what makes humans special. You feel deeply, even for those who are not your own." He smiled back. "Maybe. Or maybe we just don't like losing good friends." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the stars. The war was not over. The Krythos would return one day, but something greater had begun. Between Earth and Zareth, between human and alien, a bond stronger than any weapon had been forged. And though Ethan still could not bring himself to love the princess as a man loves a woman, in that moment he realized something simple yet powerful. He did love her light, not for its beauty, but for the hope it gave to both their worlds. The battle between the humans and the Krythos had ended, but the cost was heavy. Smoke and debris floated in the empty blackness of space. Ships burned silently, their lights flickering like dying stars. The joint human-Zareth fleet had won, but victory had left deep scars. Captain Ethan Cole was one of the many who had fallen in the last moments of the fight. His ship, the Horizon, had been struck by a plasma beam while he was protecting the Zareth command vessel, the one carrying Princess Seraphine. The blast had torn through metal, throwing him across the bridge. His crew barely managed to pull him into the escape pod before the ship broke apart. When he woke again, he was no longer in space. He found himself lying on a soft silver bed, surrounded by glowing walls that pulsed gently like living light. The air smelled like rain and flowers. It was calm, too calm for a war zone. Slowly, Ethan turned his head and saw her. Seraphine sat beside him, her eyes closed, her hands placed just above his chest. A faint light flowed from her palms into his body, soft and warm, almost like a heartbeat. When she noticed he had opened his eyes, she smiled, her face glowing like a sunrise. "You are awake," she whispered softly. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Where am I?" "You are in the healing chamber," Seraphine replied. "We brought you to the palace on Zareth after the battle. You were almost gone. I could not let you die." He blinked slowly, his memories returning in broken flashes. The explosion, the alarms, the sight of her ship in danger, and his desperate decision to block the Krythos beam. "I remember saving you," he said quietly. "I thought I wouldn't make it." Seraphine lowered her eyes. "You almost didn't. For days I used my life energy to heal your wounds. My people said it was too dangerous, but I didn't care. You saved me, Captain. You saved thousands. The least I could do was bring you back." Ethan looked at her with surprise and gratitude. Even in her royal grace, she looked exhausted, her usually glowing skin now dim and pale. "You risked your own life for me?" he asked gently. She smiled again, but it was a sad smile. "You once told my mother that I was too beautiful to love," she said quietly. "I thought it was a strange answer then, but now I think I understand what you meant." Ethan turned his head toward her. "Do you?" "Yes," she said softly. "You saw beyond what others see, my people. They see only my face, my title, my light. But you saw the danger of beauty, how it can blind reason, how it can make someone forget their duty. You did not fall for the illusion. You respected me enough to step back." She paused for a long moment. Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. "And still, you risked your life for me. That is a kind of love my people do not know, a love without desire or reward. A love born from the heart." Ethan said nothing. The quiet hum of the healing chamber filled the silence. He stared up at the glowing ceiling, feeling the warmth return to his chest. "You should rest," Seraphine said gently. "Your body is still weak." But Ethan shook his head slightly. "I've rested enough. Tell me, how are your people? How's the fleet?" Seraphine's expression softened. "We lost many, but your command saved both our worlds. The humans have proven themselves stronger than we imagined. The Queen has already begun peace talks. She says humanity has shown her the meaning of true courage." Ethan smiled faintly. "That's good to hear." He turned toward her again. "And what about you, Seraphine? How are you?" Her golden eyes glimmered like starlight. "I am well," she said quietly. "But I will not forget the moment I saw your ship fall. It was as if part of my own light was being taken away." Her words carried an emotion that went beyond gratitude. It was not romantic in the ordinary sense. It was something deeper, born from shared danger and sacrifice. Days passed as Ethan recovered. Seraphine visited him every day, bringing reports, stories, and sometimes simple silence. She taught him more about Zareth, its twin suns, its crystal oceans, and its floating cities powered by living energy. Ethan, in return, shared stories of Earth, of blue skies, rain, and laughter. Through their quiet talks, they built something rare: trust. When Ethan was strong enough to walk, Seraphine took him to the grand balcony of the royal palace. The view stretched endlessly across the shining city below. Towers of light and air, bridges made of crystal, and ships gliding like silver birds in the distance. "This is home," she said softly. "It is beautiful, isn't it?" "It is," Ethan replied, his voice calm. "It feels alive," she nodded. "Zareth is a living planet. Everything is connected. Every stone, every breeze, every beam of light. My people believe that if you listen closely, you can hear the heart of the world." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost hear it, a deep, slow rhythm like the pulse of the universe itself. "I think Earth has that too," he said quietly. "We just forgot how to listen." Seraphine looked at him, admiration in her eyes. "Your kind always surprises me. You are fragile, yet you fight harder than anyone else. You feel pain, yet you keep moving. You fear beauty, yet you find truth inside it. That is what makes humans special." Ethan chuckled lightly. "We're stubborn, mostly," she smiled. "Then it is a beautiful kind of stubbornness." Later that evening, Queen Lyra herself came to visit Ethan. Her presence filled the room with gentle power, her tall form glowing faintly under the golden lights. "You have healed well, Captain," she said kindly. "Yes, Your Majesty," Ethan replied respectfully. "Thanks to your daughter." The Queen looked at Seraphine with warmth. "She has always had a brave heart. You helped her see what true strength means." Then she turned back to Ethan. "I once asked you why you did not love my daughter. Now I do not need to ask again." Ethan bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Queen Lyra smiled faintly. "You may not love her as others do, but you have given her something greater, understanding. You taught her that beauty is not everything, that love can exist without claiming. And for that I am grateful." The Queen placed her hand gently on Ethan's shoulder. "You have also earned the respect of my people. When humans first came to our empire, many believed you were too young a race, too reckless, but now they speak your name with honor." Ethan felt humbled. "We still have much to learn, Your Majesty, but we're trying." The Queen's voice softened. "Perhaps that is what makes your species so powerful, not your ships or weapons, but your heart." As the Queen left, Ethan and Seraphine stood together on the balcony once more, watching the stars. "Do you think peace will last?" Seraphine asked. Ethan looked up at the vast sky. "If both our people keep believing in something bigger than themselves, then yes, it will last." Seraphine turned to him, her voice quiet but full of feeling. "Then maybe that is our purpose. Not to be together, but to guide our worlds toward something better." Ethan smiled softly. "Maybe love doesn't always mean possession. Sometimes it means letting something shine on its own." Seraphine's eyes glowed warmly. "You really are a strange human, Captain Ethan." He laughed lightly. "I've heard that before." Together they stood in silence, two souls from different worlds connected not by romance but by respect, courage, and understanding. The war was over, but something far greater had begun. A friendship that would become the foundation for a new era between their species. And as the twin suns of Zareth rose over the horizon, painting the sky in gold and silver light, Ethan realized something profound. Beauty was not something to fear. It was something to protect, to respect, and to learn from. For in the end, he had not just saved the princess. He had saved the meaning of what it truly meant to be human. Years passed since the Great War between the Zareth Empire and the Krithos. The galaxy had changed, and so had humanity's place within it. What began as a fragile alliance had grown into a bond of trust, trade, and knowledge between two great civilizations. Humans, once seen as young and reckless, were now respected as brave explorers and diplomats. Captain Ethan Cole became a legend across the stars, not for his victories, but for his heart. His story was told in Zareth schools, where young students learned about the human who had taught even a queen and princess the meaning of humility and love beyond beauty. But Ethan himself never cared for fame. He lived quietly on Zareth, serving as a peace advisor to the queen and an instructor to both human and Zareth cadets. Every day he watched the twin suns rise over the crystal city, reminding him of Earth's own sky. One morning, a gentle knock came at his door. When he opened it, he found Princess Seraphine standing there wearing a robe of silver light. Though the years had passed, her presence was still graceful, calm, and radiant. But there was something different in her eyes now, something wiser. "Captain," she greeted with a soft smile. "My mother wishes to see you in the Grand Hall." Ethan nodded with his usual calm. "Of course. Is something wrong?" Seraphine smiled faintly. "No, nothing is wrong, but something is changing." Those words stayed with him as he followed her through the palace corridors. The walls shimmered with living light, whispering like gentle wind. Zareth itself seemed to hum with peace. When they reached the Grand Hall, Queen Lyra stood before a gathering of humans and Zareths, diplomats, scholars, soldiers, and citizens. The atmosphere was filled with warmth and expectation. Ethan bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty," the Queen smiled. "Rise, Captain. Today we celebrate not only peace but legacy." She looked out at the crowd. When humans first came to our world, we saw them as children of the stars, curious, passionate, and sometimes reckless. But one among them taught us that there is strength in gentleness and wisdom in humility. She turned to Ethan, her voice echoing through the hall. "Captain Ethan Cole, you have given us more than courage. You gave us understanding. You showed us that love does not always mean desire, and beauty is not only seen with the eyes, but felt in the soul." The hall grew silent as her words settled over them. She raised a small silver medallion glowing with faint blue light. "By the will of the Zareth Empire, and with the blessing of humanity, I name you Star Guardian of the Alliance, the highest honor our people can give." Ethan was surprised, almost speechless. He bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, I don't deserve such an honor. I only did what anyone should have done." The Queen smiled kindly. "And that, Captain, is exactly why you deserve it." Applause filled the hall, a soft yet powerful harmony of human and Zareth voices blending together. Seraphine stood beside her mother, watching Ethan with quiet pride. Later, after the ceremony ended, Ethan stood alone on the palace balcony. The evening sky was painted in shades of gold and violet. The stars shimmered beyond the twin suns, and the city glowed below like a living jewel. Seraphine joined him there. For a while, they said nothing. The wind was gentle, carrying the faint scent of crystal blossoms from the royal gardens. "You never liked ceremonies, did you?" Seraphine said at last, a small smile on her lips. Ethan chuckled. "I've always been a man of quiet places. Big rooms make me nervous." She laughed softly, the sound light and warm. "You are still the same human who once said I was too beautiful." He turned toward her, his eyes kind. "And I still mean it, but now it's not something I fear. Your beauty is more than your face or form. It's your heart, your strength, your wisdom. You've become someone your people look up to." Seraphine's expression softened. "I learned from you. When you first came here, I thought love was simple, something that happened when two hearts felt attraction. But you taught me that love can exist without possession, that it can inspire, protect, and heal." She looked toward the horizon where stars began to appear. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if things were different. If we were both born on the same world," Ethan smiled gently, "maybe we would have been close friends there too. Maybe nothing would have changed." She nodded slowly. "Yes, because what we share isn't tied to worlds or forms. It's something greater, something both human and Zareth can understand." They stood in silence again, watching the twilight fade into night. That night, a messenger arrived from the outer colonies. A new discovery had been made, a small planet between the human and Zareth borders. It was rich in life, untouched, and perfect for both species. The Queen decided that this world would become a shared colony, a symbol of unity between humans and Zareths. She named it Illyria, meaning Hope's Light. Ethan was asked to lead the first expedition to Illyria. Though his hair had turned gray, his spirit remained strong. He accepted the mission, feeling a quiet joy inside his heart. Before he left, the Queen met him one last time. "Captain," she said softly, "I once asked you why you did not love my daughter. Now I see, and your love was never meant for one person. It was meant for all. You loved life, peace, and truth. You gave that love freely." Ethan bowed. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what I believed was right." The Queen smiled warmly. And that belief will live on, in Illyria, in my daughter, and in every heart that hears your story. When Ethan turned to leave, Seraphine stood waiting by the ship's entrance. She held a small crystal pendant that glowed with faint blue light, the same energy she once used to heal him. "This is for you," she said softly. "It holds a piece of my world's light. So wherever you go, Zareth will go with you." Ethan accepted it with deep gratitude. "Thank you, Princess. I'll keep it safe," she smiled. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that you'll keep looking at beauty, not as something to fear, but as something to protect." Ethan nodded. "I promise." And with that, he boarded his ship, the New Horizon, and left for the New World. The journey to Illyria took weeks, but it was peaceful. When Ethan finally arrived, he saw a world unlike any other, vast green lands, silver rivers, and blue skies that reminded him of Earth. It was untouched, pure and full of promise. He stepped onto the soil and smiled. This will be our future." Together, humans and Zareths began to build the first joint colony. They planted gardens, built homes, and learned from each other. Children of both species played together, laughing under the light of twin moons. Ethan spent his last years there, teaching the new generation about unity and courage. He often told them stories of a queen who ruled with wisdom, a princess who shone brighter than stars, and the lesson that changed two worlds. "Never fear beauty," he would say. "For beauty is not meant to be owned, it's meant to be shared." It reminds us that life in all its forms deserves love and respect. When Ethan finally passed away, he was buried under the great tree of Illyria, a tree that glowed softly at night, its branches reaching toward the stars. The pendant Seraphine gave him was placed in his hands. Years later, Seraphine herself visited the colony. She stood before his resting place, her eyes filled with quiet emotion. Around her, human and Zareth children ran and played, the living proof of what Ethan had built. She whispered softly, "You were right, Ethan. Beauty was never something to fear. It was something to believe in." As the wind moved through the glowing leaves, it seemed to answer her in return, a gentle, peaceful sound that carried through the valley, and under the twin suns of Illyria, two worlds continued to grow together, united forever by the heart of one man who had seen beyond beauty and loved the universe for what it could become.